Welcome to the Fixing Your City podcast. Here's George Crandall.
Chapter 2, The Transformation Strategy. Successful plans are a product of a systematic planning process. It was the mid-1990s and Portland was growing fast, so the City Council decided it was time to update the 1972 downtown plan. A 15-person steering committee composed of representatives from various special interest groups was charged with leading the planning effort. The group was diverse, with representatives from labor, business, low-income housing, minority communities, and neighborhoods. Two key political appointees were the chairman of the steering committee, an architect, and the project's plan manager and attorney. Neither had any experience developing a central city plan. The city hired me to lead a 4-person urban design advisory team to guide the planning effort. We walked right into trouble, big trouble. Our urban design advisory team recommended that as a first step, a systematic planning process be adopted. The chairman of the steering committee rejected our recommendation as he felt a planning process would restrict the steering committee's creative efforts. In fact, the committee didn't want any advice or counsel at all from the urban design advisory team. They felt that our experience might bias them. The steering committee was keen to get lots of public input, so they asked citizens to give us your dreams. The public responded with over 10,000 dreams. Unfortunately, a process for sorting and interpreting all those wonderful dreams had not been established, and so the information gathered at great public expense was of little use. Without a defined planning process, the project began to flounder. The budget was seriously depleted, and the project was way behind schedule. The mayor and city council began to understand the seriousness of the situation when local newspapers published articles about the dysfunctional planning effort. A newly elected city commissioner was assigned to manage the project. In a hastily arranged meeting, his staff said to me, "We have a problem. Our commissioner has inherited a turkey. How do we get it off his plate?" I recommended that the steering committee should be thanked for their involvement and dismissed immediately, and that the responsibility for completing the project then be turned over to the city's planning bureau. Very little could be salvaged from the incomplete work. The best they could do was to produce a seriously compromised plan as quickly as possible and get it off the table. The tragedy was that the potential for a bold, progressive plan was never realized. In the end, time, money, and opportunity had been squandered. This maddening, frustrating episode taught me a very significant lesson. It is absolutely imperative to have a systematic planning process and experienced leadership in place before planning begins. A systematic planning process. After many years preparing and reviewing plans for cities, I became interested in why some plans were successful and others were not. In order to determine what exactly worked for cities and what didn't, I decided to evaluate the plans that my firm had created, along with the plans of other consultants. I discovered, to my dismay, that far too many plans were flawed and ended up sitting on the shelf. We needed a deeper understanding of what worked to bring about positive change and what didn't. The few plans that did produce significant results were reader-friendly and included a strong emphasis on physical design. They also contained an implementation program that produced substantial momentum for change within the first 5 years of the plan's adoption, as well as strategically located public investments. Lastly, I discovered that if a city didn't establish guidelines and standards to support their recommendations, fundamental concepts of the plan would be seriously compromised. The most common problem with the unsuccessful plans was a lack of a systematic planning process. To address that void, I developed a 3-part strategy for transformation, which I call a transformation strategy. It incorporates everything I've learned over the course of my personal life and offers a clear, direct, and reliable pathway to successful urban transformation. All 3 parts of the transformation strategy process are essential. And if 1 or 2 parts are left out, the planning effort will not result in a robust, long-lasting transformation. Like a house, the 3 basic elements of the transformation strategy provide a foundation, an enclosure, and a roof. Public support provides a foundation for the transformation strategy. The framework plan provides an enclosure for the transformation design elements and interventions, and implementation rules provide a roof to protect the integrity of the completed framework plan. A transformation strategy, much like a house, will not survive if any one of the 3 components is missing. A transformation strategy is different than a typical downtown master plan. Most often, a master plan is a wordy document with generalized land use concepts and very little information about next steps. A transformation strategy is very detailed, with an emphasis on the built environment and public improvements that will generate immediate transformation momentum by attracting private investment. Part 1, public support. A transformation strategy involves a public involvement process that is economical and effective. It educates the public about the transformation process and creates a constituency for developing and implementing the transformation strategy. Part 2 is the framework plan. The framework plan is the heart of the transformation strategy. If the design element is weak, the transformation strategy will not succeed. It will become a shelf plan. Land use, circulation actions required to make necessary interventions are identified. Typically, the time required to complete a framework plan is approximately 6 to 9 months. And Part 3, implementation rules. Implementation rules outline essential guidelines and standards to ensure that the intent of the framework plan is achieved. These rules tend to be the missing component in most planning efforts, yet they are an essential requirement if the transformation strategy is to be successful. Implementation rules include public area standards, development regulations, design guidelines, and a design review process. A detailed description of each of the 3 parts of the transformation strategy can be found in chapters 3, 4, and 5. There are 3 phases of work in producing a framework plan. Phase 1, start. The focus of the start phase is to identify the most important community issues to be addressed in the development of the framework plan. Too often, consultants and their clients become fixated on analyzing and summarizing stale information that was generated in previous planning studies, and therefore end up spending far too much time in the start phase. Though it may be tempting to draw on the findings of a previous plan, outdated material is rarely, if ever, valuable in producing an effective framework plan. It is not uncommon for 60% of a project's budget to be allocated to the start phase, but the start phase, including public support, should consume no more than 20% of the budget. Phase 2, design. The second phase is the most important part of the framework plan. During the design phase, alternative possibilities for responding to the community's issues are developed and evaluated, and the best alternatives are selected and refined. The major portion of the framework plan budget, at least 60%, should be allocated to the design phase. but it's not uncommon to see less than 30% of a budget allocated to this task. Many framework plans lose focus during the design phase. This is often due to insufficient talent and experience on the part of the consultant team, and an inability to deal with the complexity of a framework plan. Architects and professional planners are, at times, little help. Architects are schooled in the design of individual buildings on particular sites, not necessarily in the complex configuration of multi-building projects or entire segments of a city. Planners are trained to address rules and regulations and may have little exposure to or understanding of urban design. The vacuum created by the absence of sufficient design expertise can produce an ineffective framework plan. The challenge for every city is to find consultants with adequate experience and training to produce a successful, highly effective framework plan. For the design phase to be successful, it is vital that the project team include experienced professionals who have demonstrable design talent and awareness of urban design solutions that are successful, competency in developing creative solutions, experience preparing graphic materials for community review, materials that can be easily understood by the general public. It is also important that members of the project team stay open to all possibilities so that the best solutions can emerge. And phase 3, implementation. A plan is only as good as its implementation strategy. The implementation phase constitutes the bottom line in any planning process. Too often the implementation strategy is an afterthought and only given 5 to 10% of the budget. A more appropriate budget allocation for the implementation phase is on the order of 20% of the framework plan. The implementation portion of the framework plan is the roadmap to success and should address the following issues. Is the strategy for implementation clear? What are the plan's priorities? What are the game-changing projects? What is the business case? In other words, the return on investment for the proposed public improvements. All responsibilities clearly defined and funding strategies well developed. Shelf plans. The transformation strategy systematic planning process produces plans that get implemented. Shelf plans don't get implemented. In shelf plans, the framework plan is anemic or missing. Instead, the emphasis is on a never-ending public involvement and arbitrary implementation rules. Neighborhood districts. Because of the urgency of climate change and the imperative to reduce carbon emissions, our firm has focused on developing new land use transportation models that have the potential to significantly alter the relationship between where people live and how they travel for work and commerce. Since our goal was to reduce reliance on the automobile, we studied the various purposes for travel. We learned that most daily trips are for work, shopping, and recreation. We could see that if households are located in close proximity to these daily destinations, automobile trips will be shortened. And if households are located within a 5-minute walk or a safe 5-minute bike ride, many automobile trips could be eliminated altogether. By using the above parameters to shorten or eliminate automobile trips, we developed 2 new planning models that illustrate scenarios for achieving significant energy savings as well as economic benefits. The BOD and MOD. Both the bicycle-oriented district, BOD, and mobility-oriented district, MOD, models include protected bikeways that connect the surrounding residential areas to a hub. The BOD may or may not include bus transit. The MOD includes high-capacity transit, HCT, such as streetcars, light rail, or bus rapid transit. HCT's reliability and ability to carry large passenger loads offers the greatest potential for reducing automobile travel. These models differ from traditional planning models in three important ways. First, integration of land use and transportation. Both the BOD and MOD neighborhood models are organized around a central hub with a grocery store, restaurants, and retail and commercial services. The ideal hub also contains employment opportunities. All neighborhood residents live within a 5-minute bicycle ride of the hub, and many residents live within a 5-minute walk of the hub. The BOD is served by buses on streets, and the MOD is served by BRT, LRT, or a streetcar. Second, larger impact area. The traditional neighborhood planning model encompasses an area of up to about a quarter or a half a mile in distance from the neighborhood center. The BOD and MOD models, on the other hand, encompass an area extending 1 mile from the center of a hub. That's an increase in acreage of 16 times greater than the amount of land encompassed by the traditional quarter-mile planning model. And third, the commercial hub. A commercial hub containing all the shopping, recreational, and employment opportunities needed to serve the surrounding residential neighborhoods is a vital part of a neighborhood district. In both the BOD and the MOD models, the hub is the centerpiece. Determining where to locate a hub is the first step in creating a neighborhood district. A hub cannot be located just anywhere. It needs to be located where it has the greatest potential for success. Questions to consider when locating a hub. Is the land area available? Can existing land uses be adapted? Can the area be served by public transit? Can a network of protected bikeways between the hub and adjacent neighborhoods be created? Would employers be attracted to the area? And can retail be successful in the area? These issues can be resolved through a conceptual design exercise that determines if a proposed hub location has the necessary potential to supply most of the goods and services needed by the residents. Protected bikeways. European cities that enjoy high volumes of bicycle riding provide well-protected bicycle lanes for their residents. These protected lanes, sometimes referred to as cycle tracks, are separated from vehicular traffic physical barriers, such as curbs, landscaping, or parked vehicles. Without the safety of a protected bikeway system, bicycle riders can be expected to comprise less than 10% of all travelers. With protected bikeways, a percentage of all trips made by bicycles could reach as much as 40 to 50%. On average, a bicycle rider can travel 1 mile in 5 minutes on a protected bikeway. Both the BOD and MOD models include a network of protected bikeways that link surrounding neighborhoods to the central hub and result in less automobile usage. Surveys indicate that potential bike riders fall into 3 categories. First, strong and fearless. 7% of the population are confident riders or confident riding their bicycles in bicycle lanes or in the street along with other traffic. Second, capable but cautious. 60% of the population would ride a bicycle if they felt safe. And third, remaining citizens. 33% of the population will never ride a bicycle. The challenge is to create a bicycle system that feels safe enough to encourage the capable but cautious to bike. Unfortunately, lanes painted onto the street pavement aren't considered sufficiently safe by most people. Research indicates that these riders want a physical separation between their bicycles and the moving traffic. The following considerations are paramount in locating a protected bikeway system through existing neighborhoods. Is there enough space available for the bikeway, or will it be necessary to take out a lane of traffic? Can funding be found to retrofit existing roadways to accommodate protected bikeways? Unless the benefits of the system are developed in terms that individuals can relate to, increased disposable income, healthier bodies, improved net worth, and a reduction in greenhouse gases, there is little chance that a protected bikeway system will find community support. Transit options. The process for creating a good or even great transit system will vary according to the size of the city. Smaller cities may only be able to afford a bus system, whereas large communities may be able to afford high-capacity transit systems such as light rail transit or bus rapid transit or streetcars. Developers interested in offering proximity to transit as an amenity to buyers and renters prefer locations next to high-capacity transit. The high-capacity transit alignment and station locations are permanent, whereas bus stops are not. Stops disappear when bus routes are changed. Whatever type of transit system is introduced into a community, transit stations should always be located in the center of a hub, not along neighborhood edges. Economic benefits. The potential benefits of neighborhood districts, including both the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by up to 50% and an economic stimulus for the local marketplace that results from money spent at local businesses rather than on gasoline. Neighborhood district models have the potential to reduce and shorten automobile trips significantly, increase transit ridership, provide a substantial local economic stimulus. Neighborhood districts are the basic building blocks for creating a transformation strategy. The transformation strategy utilizes the neighborhood district planning models to improve the quality of life in a city and effectively address climate change. The transformation strategy process works for cities of all sizes. A small city might consist of a single neighborhood district. Larger cities may have many neighborhood districts connected to each other and to the city center by transit and protected bikeway networks. The city center could be considered a neighborhood district with an employment emphasis. Significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions will require land use and transportation plans and policies that 1. Reduce automobile use, 2. Limit sprawl. Neighborhood districts have the potential to do both. A city that adopts a neighborhood district planning model to guide land use and transportation policies will be well positioned to adapt to a changing world. Limiting sprawl. Most cities accommodate growth by expanding outward, commonly called sprawl. This model creates low-density suburban development and stimulates automobile travel. The alternative to expanding outward is to expand upward by increasing residential densities within the existing city boundaries. The neighborhood districts provide a blueprint for how to accomplish the task. In many cities, the typical residential population density is approximately 8 to 10 units per acre. At that level of density, the population within a 1 mile radius would be about 20,000 people. In a neighborhood district, the density within a 1/4 mile radius of a neighborhood center could increase over time to approximately 60 units per acre, resulting in an additional 9,000 people. Outside the 1/4 mile radius, population density would be expected to change very little. When a transition to a neighborhood district is completed, the population will have grown by 45%, from 20,000 to 29,000 people. Reducing automobile use. A transformation strategy has the potential to reduce vehicle miles traveled by up to 50% in the following ways. 1. Shortening automobile trips. Many of the goods and services needed by residents on a daily basis would be conveniently located in a mixed-use neighborhood center. And 2. Eliminating automobile trips. Protected bikeways and transit would connect residential areas to a mixed-use neighborhood hub and to other neighborhood districts. Regional benefits. When the MOD model is applied to a regional transit system, the potential economic benefits can be substantial. The increased population densities and convenient access to the area's transit stations translates into an increased transit ridership and revenues from fares. In creating shorter and fewer automobile trips translates into a substantial green dividend. My firm applied the MOD model to Edmonton's 60-station LRT transit system and estimated the anticipated green dividend and increased revenues from fares. While the results from a single station area MOD were not necessarily impressive, the economic benefits from implementing MODs throughout the entire system were compelling. If the MOD model were implemented at all stations, the potential to increase annual revenues from fares would rise from $2 million to $37 million. The anticipated economic stimulus, or green dividend, with MOD was estimated to be $127 million. Without MOD, it was a meager $3 million.
Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe to get updates for future chapters.